What's up, locals? It's Mike and Kenzie coming to you live from the 775. Now, before we get into this episode, we have one small request. Please be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen. Now, let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of your favorite locals. It is post-election, the Sunday after Election Day. A lot of feelings in the air.
Yes, many. I've seen a lot of liberal tears on TikTok and Instagram. It's watering the foundation of prosperity in this country, and I am so thankful.
So how are you feeling?
Well, the candidate I wanted to win won, and I think that our country's going to be going in a better direction for 4 years. I think that the majority of the country feels that way, and it finally feels safe to say it out loud. Which is sad. There was 4 years where you couldn't say, like, hey, this is kind of like a dumpster fire, and we went wrong.
Well, I think it was said, but I think it was just hard to have conversation with people who had opposing views of that, because it wasn't really a conversation. It was more just being, called a neo-Nazi or racist or whatever. Even if you were still like in the middle, even if you were leaning Democrat, and any kind of criticism towards the Democrat Party, even if it was true, it just felt like you would get annihilated.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that just stoked the fires of division.
Yeah.
Because you could criticize one side. Doesn't mean you agree with the other side. But you're like, hey, I don't think that we should be giving young kids like puberty blockers and permanently fucking up their puberty. That's irreversible. And there's a lot of data that shows that. Like, why is that a crazy perspective to have?
Why is it crazy to just ask questions?
Yeah, I'm just asking questions. Well, the problem is when you have, like, there are crazy people online, and there's people that just love to stir the shit. And they always kind of run it back into like some kind of conspiracy theory, something crazy, something off the wall. But instead, you're just trying to like criticize one side and look at like, hey, this isn't working very well. Like having wide open borders for 4 years seems to have been a problem. And talk to the people who live in border states. That was rough for them. So how are you feeling post-election? Where are you at?
I am feeling patriotic. I'm feeling a lot of love for this country. On Election Day, I have never felt so many, like,
I have never felt so much, what's the word? Feelings.
No, I haven't felt like more love for being able to vote and like participate in something, because I felt like the last two elections, I didn't feel like I was an informed voter, which we've talked about too in the past of like, I wasn't that interested in politics, and I was, the last election I voted, but I feel like I just didn't know a lot about what was going on. I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And I felt like I needed to be a participating citizen of this country. But this time it felt different, because I feel like the last 4 years I've been living out on my own, like paying for myself. I've been actually been able to experience some life and see how different policies that have been enacted affect me, and thinking about, okay, well, what would I want to change in order to better my life? And so I feel like that kind of leads me into the topic of our conversation today, which is curiosity.
In the age of the internet, algorithms are crushing curiosity. How do you stay curious? Actually, I want to ask that more like a newsman. How do you stay curious?
How do I stay curious? I stay curious by, one, asking critical thinking type questions. I feel like growing up, I didn't ask questions that were based from a critical thinking standpoint. And I don't know why that is. I just feel like maybe it's the age of the internet where you're just kind of fed information and you're not like digging deeper. Like things are just so easily accessible. And once you read a headline or once like you see somebody else talk about it, you just kind of like take it as truth without thinking to just dive deeper and ask questions. So I feel like I'm now getting to a point of asking questions that are pushing back a little bit on assumed truth. So that's one. Two, I feel like I do better watching documentaries than reading books. It's just the way that my brain likes to receive information. I also feel like just staying social. Like I am a social butterfly at heart, and I feel like the more that I interact with people, the more that I learn from them. And I feel like that's where my curiosity comes from too, is just like asking people questions and learning from other people's experiences. But those are just like some of the things. What are ways that you stay curious?
I am a natural contrarian by heart. I think I'm really good at looking at other people's perspectives and maybe hidden intentions and also surface level intentions. I like to consider the other side a lot. So I'm an only child, which is helpful. And I was at a young age where I got to witness my parents fuck up a little bit. And so my sources of truth, there was like a crack in the foundation immediately. Mm-hmm. And that was really helpful because that made me question the authority of my parents. And then when that dissolved at a young age, I started questioning the authority of teachers and people who tell me information. Because if my baseline is like, I don't know if you guys are always right because I've seen you be wrong before, that was like opening a whole new door.
Yeah.
And then I like to do kind of like the gossip of information when I get it. So who's telling me it? Like, why are they interested in telling me? What does it mean? What's the purpose that they're trying to get across? What happened? And also, like, how is that going to impact me? What kind of, like, what are the details? So it's the who, what, when, how, where, why. Mm-hmm. And trying to just get to the bottom of why it matters. That's how I approach most, like, headlines when I'm not just immediately absorbing them and taking them as fact, which happens from time to time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's usually how I interface with authority. And so when there's an authority figure like Dr. Fauci telling you to wear a mask outdoors and stay 6 feet apart from a respiratory disease that spreads very easily, that makes me question things a lot. So I ask a lot of questions.
Which I think we should be asking questions. I don't think that we should just be taking things as fact. Like we need to be doing our own research. But I think what's been hard, just especially in the last 10 years is, I mean, more than the last 10 years, but I just think for me personally, because I'm 27, last 10 years I've been, able to vote and take matters into my own hands. And so I feel like for me, I've noticed the last 10 years that the news has not always been reliable.
Right.
Which
fake news media.
Which is hard because it's like, if that's how the public is supposed to be receiving their news and it's not even 100% trustworthy, now you're left to your own means where you actually have to like dig a little bit deeper and be your own journalist.
Well, also during the pandemic, when there are articles being published saying, don't do your own research, like don't tell people to look into shit, don't read, don't evaluate information. Like that is...
When and what was that?
That was a huge debate. So when they were pushing vaccines and telling everybody, like, you need to get vaccinated, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yeah.
Like, they were telling people, don't do your own research. We have experts. These experts are medical professionals. They know what they're doing. We have Dr. Fauci at the forefront of it. Like, don't do your own research. We've done the data. Like, just accept what we're saying as fact.
Yeah.
And there was so much money and propaganda behind like pharmaceutical ads and the news being supported by pharmaceutical ads that they're pushing this narrative when in reality, a couple years later, come to find out they actually botched a lot of the research. Mm-hmm. They threw away inconvenient data, and vaccines are not safe nor effective when it comes to COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
And some of the other ones too are actually kind of concerning. So shout out to RFK Jr. I'm excited that he's going to be looking into that, and hopefully they kind of take away some of the pressure. I don't think that I'm getting way off topic on this tangent, but I feel pretty passionate about it. Like we had the Democrat Party that was in bed with Big Pharma pushing a major agenda to get everybody vaccinated because there was a lot of money behind it. And then that was also funding the news. And so it was all in line, like in lockstep. This is what we're saying. Don't do your own research. Listen to the experts. And also, we're going to make billions of dollars in the process. And
any data that was outside of their narrative was just thrown away, like what you were saying, inconvenient data. And all of that's coming out now. And I think Trump had just announced over the last couple days that there's going to be such a transparency from the government that the public needs to like brace for, because they're about to release a bunch of
That was
shit.
Kush Patel, which is potentially Trump's choice for CIA director.
Yeah.
And he's telling the public, brace yourselves, because we're going to be releasing the JFK files. We're going to be releasing the Epstein files. We're going to be releasing the Diddy list. Like, the list goes on. A lot of people are very likely going to lose their jobs, go to prison. But that could also just be hype. Because the same way how on the campaign trail the first time Trump was like, Hillary, if I was president, you'd be in jail. Like, he's turned around on that. He's like, I'm not going to indict a former president's wife and former Secretary of State based on those things. It's a terrible look. Yeah. Like, that's also weaponizing the justice system against your enemies, which he experienced the last 4 years. Yeah. So. And he's probably like, I don't want to do that to anybody else. Like, I just want to make America great again. Yeah. Don't be a hypocrite. Yeah. But going back to just curiosity. Got way off topic there. Going back to curiosity and how I stay curious. I feel like this election season, I was the most curious compared to the last two that I was able to vote for. Like, the first one, I actually did the math on that. You said we were 18. We were 19. When we could vote? When we could vote, yeah. We were 19 that year. Are you doing your own research again? No. You were turning 20 after the election in 2016. Graduated high school 2015. I was 18 years old. 2016, I would have been 20. Right? Yeah, but like the election was November, whatever, like 3rd or 4th or 5th. Election day, November 5th. Is that the same every year? Or every 4 years? Yeah. Oh, okay, well, November 5th. Whatever. Just like the presidential inauguration is on January 20th. My birthday. Happy birthday. Yeah, it's going to be a great birthday. But anyway, so we were 19 years old, sophomores in college. I definitely felt at that time that I was being very influenced by my classes and my professors who were very left-leaning, very extreme. Liberal agenda. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything that they were teaching was like wrong, but they definitely brought in politics into the mix. And I have to say that I was influenced by them to the point where I didn't do any research on the other side. Like, I wasn't using critical thinking skill sets to actually assess what both parties were saying. And so I didn't vote that first election, which I think in the grand scheme of things, it not that it really matters anyway sometimes, but I think that if you're not informed, then why are you voting? Then why are you voting? Yeah. A lot of people vote with their feelings. Other people vote with their wallets. But if you don't read the fine print and you just read propaganda, like you're going to be kind of controlled to how you vote. Well, that's okay to vote with a combination of things, your feelings, with your wallet, with your lifestyle, with how you care about people. I mean, I do think that all of those things should be taken into consideration, but I literally knew nothing. All I knew was what I was being kind of taught by my friends and by my professors, really. So anyway, I did not vote the first time in 2016. The second time, we had just moved to Truckee, 6 months living on our own, living together. It was the pandemic. And 2020. We were 23 years old by that time. And still, I did not feel like I was super informed on politics. I wasn't like that curious about it. I really didn't care. It just felt like any time a conversation around politics came up, it was so heated. Because in my family, I definitely had family members that were on opposing sides with friends even. I feel like I have a combination of friends that are just like so left or so right. Like, I feel like I wasn't able to actually have conversations with people that were kind of in the middle on things. And so
I just felt like I wasn't interested in having those kind of conversations. And so it felt like the safe way to vote and the safe way to talk about things was to be more on the Democrat side. And especially with the way that things were kind of heating up in the 2020 election, I just felt like it was like a safer way to vote. So I voted like more Democrat, but
I have strong opinions towards that.
Yeah.
Which is, imagine there's a child throwing a temper tantrum, or in this case, people rioting
yeah,
and burning cities down, and to appease them by going, okay, fine, you're candidate. Like, now you'll calm down. No, you punish that child. You put them in naughty timeout. They go in the corner. They go to jail. All right. We don't just let people riot in the streets and loot and burn shit.
Yeah.
And then like, all right, now that Biden's in office.
right. It was scary though. Like it literally was so scary that I was like, I just want it to end. And so I feel like if we vote Biden in, which again, I was a very uninformed voter, and
Look at how it went the last 4 years.
right. Yeah. Like I just think like after experiencing the last 4 years and starting to develop an opinion based off of what I think would better my life, what I think would better the country, like just based off of my own experience, it got me curious and wanted me to actually look into the ballot measures that were going to be on Nevada's voting ballot. And then also just like doing more research on Trump and Kamala and watching interviews and watching the podcast interviews, like on both sides, like actually being curious to learn what they have to say. And then doing some more research on their policies. And even for the people that were local on the Nevada ballot, like the judges that we were enacting, our senates, like I wanted to know what they stood for, and if that resonated with me. And so how I was able to do my own research is I actually went to their websites, instead of, watching TV and then seeing a terrible commercial of Sam Brown, which just a little bit of background for people who are listening, who are not from Nevada. Sam Brown is the Republicans' choice for
Senate.
Our U.S. Senate for Nevada. And then Jackie Rosen was the Democrat.
The incumbent.
And, there were all these terrible commercials of them showing Sam Brown and saying like, Sam Brown wants to take away women's rights. He doesn't care if, Sam Brown.
I can back you up here.
I know. Hold on. But I wrote it down because hold on.
Sam Brown doesn't want you to get abortions, even in the case of incest or rape, which is definably false.
Yeah. So they're literally showing, and Sam Brown is a burn victim. He fought in the Afghanistan war, almost lost his life, right?
He is a captain, retired from the U.S. military, who was blown up in a vehicle and got horrifically burned, and that war hero came back to the United States and said, I want to make Nevada great again, too.
Yes.
I'm going to fix this shit, which Nevada's doing pretty good, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
And when it comes to being Republican, he's kind of in the middle on a lot of issues, as is Jackie Rosen.
Jackie Rosen's more in the middle. Sam Brown's definitely Republican. Like, he's definitely more...
himself a little bit. Less taxes. The main thing.
He's definitely more. He ran as a Republican. He is more Republican compared to Jackie Rosen. Jackie Rosen, I would say, is obviously left leaning, but she definitely was able to work with both Democrats and Republicans on a lot of stuff in the last 6 years. Has passed a lot of bipartisan laws. Okay,
it's funny because you can tell who voted for who in this conversation. I voted for a true hero of this nation.
Okay, well, here's the thing. So I want to go back to the commercials. The commercials that we were seeing about Sam Brown were awful. And
pure mudslinging.
They were basically saying, like, he doesn't care about women's rights. He doesn't want you to get an abortion, even in the case of rape, incest, or the life of the mother.
Which is not true.
And if you had just watched that commercial and you didn't do any research and you just believed it, you would think he's a monster. Seriously. Come on. You would think he's a monster.
They say that Yeah, I'm just looking at you because respectfully, he's hard to look at.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
okay.
you put all that
but
together
that's what I'm saying.
and you're like,
And
oh
so,
my God.
Yeah. Anyway, so I did some digging, go to Sam Brown's website, and he states, well, I'm going to read it because it's like the first fucking line on the life issue. Mm-hmm. He goes, I am pro-life with exceptions of the tragic cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Right there. Mm-hmm. Just false, just completely false of what the commercial had said. He believes that every life is precious. He learned that firsthand when he nearly lost his own life in Afghanistan. And he also says that Nevada voters have made it clear where they stand on this issue, which he, I think, updated this after everyone voted. But he said, Nevada voters have made it clear where they stand on this issue by enshrining protections for abortion in our state law. As a U.S. Senator, I will not vote to overturn the decision of Nevadans. I will not support a national abortion ban. However, he will oppose any bill that pushes for federal funding of abortion, late-term abortions, or abortion without perinatal notification. Oh, sorry, parental notification.
Which is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, but with that being said, too, like, it's not that he's just like, no abort, like, he wants to, not have any funding towards abortions. He wants to also provide solutions. Mm-hmm. He wants to be better as a nation and provide support for women and let them know that, like, you can still protect this life, and to have more funding around the mom and around the woman having those options. Important thing to point out, though.
Just because his personal beliefs say, I don't think abortion is a good thing, but I am a senator. I'm an elected representative. He wanted to be.
And he's going to represent the people of Nevada.
I'm going to represent the interests of the voters that I do. So if everybody says, no, we want abortion here,
then he's going to do that even
though it conflicts with his personal beliefs, which is what your job is to do as a elected representative.
Right.
So I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that he's like, this is how I feel, but I won't vote that way because you guys feel this way.
Right.
That's my job.
Yeah.
And they still put Jackie in.
Yeah, because I think Jackie still wants a lot of the things that he wanted around, like, border security and taxes and all that kind of stuff. Like, she does lean on the Republican side for certain policies.
She works across the aisle.
Yeah, she works with both
as
parties.
You should. Yeah.
So I think Nevada's been doing great for the last 6 years, and I think it will continue to do great with Trump as our president and Jackie Rosen as our U.S. Senator. But with all that to say, I feel like I was able to use critical thinking skills and also, like, use the tools that we have. I used freaking ChatGPT, literally put in the ballot measure and asked it, what would a yes mean for this and what would a no mean for it? And it literally gave me all the information, was pulling from recent articles in 2024. Like, it actually gave me, like, a place to start, and then I could actually start, like, reading those articles and doing some more research on it. But I felt like just very informed going into the poll. I felt very excited. I felt like I was doing my job as a U.S. citizen, and I felt good about it. And so lately, I've just been really curious, like, with what I've been curious about. I've been curious about politics just because it's just been so in our face. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad for it to kind of, like, simmer down a little bit. But I wanted to ask, like, what have you been curious about lately?
I mean, I've been taking so much of the politics in that it's kind of exhausting, to be honest, even though we just talked about it pretty excitedly.
Yeah.
I've been way more interested in, like, the Wild West and great explorers of this awesome nation, and just, like, the Manifest Destiny period. We watched a documentary on it last night. Shout out to Kit Carson. But it's really fun to just see, like, the explorers and the people that are true mavericks. They're going out there charging the way. They do some fucked up stuff in the process, but they are the reason why we're able to sit here and have a conversation in Reno, Nevada.
Right.
Because they blazed the trail to get here. Beyond that, general interests and, like, where my interests lie, U.S. history, specifically, like, U.S. conflicts and war. is pretty interesting because I'm always wondering on the geopolitical scope, where are we right now? And are we on the good side? Are we on the bad side? Because in school, when you're brought up, they're always teaching you like, we're the good guys. Mm-hmm. They want to instill that patriotism. But there are many times where we've been on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
Like Vietnam. Like we shouldn't have been there. We just pulled up just to support France.
Yeah.
And France even pulled out because they're like, yeah, we enslaved people and we probably shouldn't. They bailed because they realized it was a losing war. So really interested in those two things. Outside of like politics and history and all of that, I love comedy. It's been like, it's what I love. It's what I'm interested in. That takes up a lot of my mental plate. And recently, over the last year and a half, I'd say masculinity. What that looks like for me, what other people's definitions of it are, how it's very rigid in my mind, but it's pretty flexible in others, and like how I see that manifest.
Yeah. So with those interests and curiosities, like how do you embark on those curiosities? Like what's your style of learning, and how do you enact that in your everyday life?
Well, the masculinity interest came up because I was insecure about my own. So previously I was working a job where I was not making enough money to be a breadwinner. I couldn't support a family or buy a house or like plan for the future. And that, after multiple years, like wore me down mentally. And it broke me to the point of like, I can't support a family with this income. What am I doing? And then it just turned into a downward spiral. So did a little therapy for a short period of time. And I also kind of like pulled my head out of my ass and was like, this is a job. This is not defining me. And I noticed that the insecurity I was feeling, I would project outward towards other men. Where I was like, oh, that's not very masculine of you. And I would like have these like really shitty thoughts. And that set me off to question my own, really wonder, why am I being so bitchy and like non-masculine in the same thought. And so that's like where that interest comes from. I would say the U.S. war conflict stuff ties directly into masculinity. I think it's a lot of violence and interest around that. But I'm more interested in the history aspect of like what happened actually, what's the narrative, because history gets written by winners. And also why did these wars take place? Why are current wars taking place? What can we avoid going into them? What can I take away? Just, there's a lot of lessons that I think you can learn. Like for Iraq, you shouldn't support the war machine. But we had something like 9/11 happen and everybody was on board because America wanted revenge.
Yeah.
And we were sold like this beautiful lie that got everybody on board. But there were a lot of other people on the other side, mostly Democrats, who were like, no, we shouldn't be doing this. What are you doing? Yeah. And so kind of tying it all back into what we were talking about politically, there's a great balance between Republicans, Democrats, everybody in between. Because if you go towards one extreme, you don't have a country. You have some form of dictatorship, whether it be left or right.
Yeah.
What are your interests? That was a monologue. That was not a conversation.
No, but I appreciate you sharing like your curiosities and where they're coming from too, because I was starting to think about that of curiosity also stems from self-reflection. And I think for me, like I've always done self-reflection, and in the case of like kind of criticism, I think like sometimes I would do too much self-reflection where it just always was about me, rather than just kind of growing as a person and just like being better and just doing better. I just feel like I was always kind of reflecting on just like past behaviors and who I am, but just in a really negative cycle. I don't even know if that just made sense.
I'm tracking. I'm with you.
But yeah, so I think that curiosity kind of stems from your motivation in phase of life. I've gone through a lot of different phases in life. Like right now, over the last 6 months, I've just been like really into politics. But before that, I wasn't. That wasn't my phase of life.
Yeah, you treated politics like a vampire.
Yeah.
Like, no, get away from me.
Yeah, because I just didn't like having the conversation. It was always like tense, and I feel like I would always cry.
Which is silly.
Like, I would get so, like, swept up in it emotionally. And I think it's because I just didn't have any information or knowledge on what I was talking about. I'm like, I believe this because I just feel this way. Mm-hmm. When it's like, okay, that can be part of the reason, you know, but it can't be the whole reason why you believe something and stand on business on something, you know.
Tell you this is a bad person, and if you just take that as fact, you're like, I feel that bad people should not rule.
Right.
Like, okay, that's a legitimate feeling, but if you're not informed, or I could be,
or when you just meet somebody and you just are like, I feel like they're a bad person.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, I guess that's a different thing. That would be like intuition kicking in.
You're like, spidey senses are tingling. This dude is crazy. Stay away.
No, But anyway, so yeah, I feel like the things that I've been curious about lately, I think on a general census, I have always been into health and fitness. Just always has piqued my interest, because even when I was a child, I would have stomach issues, and I had to go through this whole like dietary change in my life where I didn't eat dairy for probably like 8 or 9 years. And now I eat dairy because I took that long ass break, and now my body can actually like, you know, digest it and process it. But yeah, I think generally like I'm usually into health and fitness stuff. Also being curious about like CrossFit. Like I want to know how to gain different skill sets. I don't want to just be like doing the workout. Like I actually want to be fit enough to do like ab work. Like I'm noticing like I can go in and RX a workout, but then we do like the littlest like accessory work and I'm dying. And it's because I don't have like as strong of a core as I thought that I did. And I'm realizing that's the foundation for everything in CrossFit, whether you're lifting and doing a power lift move, or if you're doing anything gymnastic style, you need to have a strong core, and that's in your abdomen and in your back. And so I'm very curious lately on how to make that stronger, and so that I can achieve my goals. Again, it also comes back down to like, you care enough to achieve your goals in life, whether that's financial, whether that's physical, you know, whatever type of goal you have. Like if you want to get married and have a family, or if you want to be the CEO of a company, or if you want to, you know, be an entrepreneur, like you're now making decisions out of curiosity on how to reach your goal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think curiosity can come in different waves at different times, and how you enact on that is just based off of your motivation.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the internet's really fucking up curiosity for a lot of people, because your algorithm is just feeding you information. It's just feeding you what it thinks you'll like. And a lot of people have lost that creative, curious spark. It's gone. They just look and go, nice boobs, next. Like there's no curious anymore. There's no questioning. It's just, they're just shoveling slop like a buffet for a bunch of pigs. They go, yummy, yummy, yummy.
Well, I think a lot of people too, when you have your algorithm that's feeding you information on all these different people that are doing stuff, is making people dull. Like, I think it's just making boring people, because all you're doing when you're, you know, on social media and you're on the internet is you're just being fed all this information, and okay, you can talk about it for an hour, but you can't do it. You can't like do the things that you're talking about. Like, I think that there's an importance in like doing the things that catch your curiosity and attention.
So what you're telling me is I should be a frontiersman and I should go explore.
No, I think that there's
Canada.
Well, no, I don't. Okay, no. Then I think like what I'm talking about is like cooking videos. Like if you love cooking videos, but you don't cook your own food,
that's just porn.
That's just like, yeah, in a way, food porn in a way. I don't know. I just feel like as humans, we can be better about doing stuff. And like for me, I think that I could be better about reading stuff. But in terms of doing stuff, like I've always been this curious activity kid growing up. Like when I think, like I didn't really read books. And I feel like a lot of people, when they think about curiosity, they think about like reading maybe. And I just wasn't that kid. I didn't really have that influence in my family, which is totally fine because I was curious in other ways. Like I was very adventurous. I feel like I was always doing a sport. I was doing musical theater. But my family just was like, we were an activity family. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where a lot of my curiosity stemmed from, was like doing shit.
Yeah.
And when I think about how that's affected me today, like I just love doing things. Like, yes, I love being in conversation and I love learning about people. But when it comes to like certain subjects, like the frontiersmen, you know, or even politics, it's like I recently just started getting into that, but I wouldn't be able to hold a conversation about that. I could ask a lot of questions, mm-hmm. but I wouldn't be able to like share knowledge and have philosophical conversation around it. And that was something that I felt really insecure about and still feel insecure about, which is why I'm wanting to make that change and research stuff that I'm interested about.
You know what's almost more important than reading for information is reading comprehension. Mm-hmm. That is not taught. That's something that is almost intuitive. Like you can teach critical thinking, you can teach the scientific method to children, but that needs to be reinforced heavily, because if you don't criticize the actual information in front of you, like it could be totally bullshit, but it's printed in a book and it's got this fancy hardcover on it, so it must be true. Not the case. Mm-hmm. Like that's the critical thinking that's missing from the education that I received in like elementary school, middle school. We started talking about scientific method in middle school in biology, but that never transferred to English. Yeah. They never were like, hey, maybe you should wonder about the authors that are writing these books. Maybe you should wonder if this guy's full of shit, like Joseph
Also,
Smith.
like, where did he get the motivation to write that? Like, what's his background or what's her background, whatever it is. Like, yeah, just being a little bit more curious than reading what's on the surface. But I think with reading comprehension, it's being able to repeat back like what you just learned. I did not do that. Mm-hmm. And being, you know, a middle child, that means I'm an older sibling, you know, to Nate. I don't really feel like I was like teaching my little brother things, like where I would be reading about it and then teaching him it. But like my older brother did that with me. Like he was reading and researching a bunch of things and he would tell that to me, and it's almost like reinforcing for him what he believes. And it's a good way to practice reading comprehension in a way, is like being able to repeat that to somebody.
It's a sign of you understanding something. Yeah. If you can explain it simply to someone else. If they can poke a bunch of holes and ask a bunch of questions where your answer is, I don't know, right, then you don't totally understand it. Yeah. Like that's the basis of knowledge right there is, okay, I got this piece of information, I'm going to share it with you. Right. And you're like, I don't understand what you just shared. What does that mean? You're like, fuck, I can't explain it any simpler.
Yeah, and I hate that. Like I hate losing the words like after reading something or watching something. Like I have to practice, which I feel like I have been doing with you. Mm-hmm. I feel like the last year I've been very intentional. And honestly, this podcast has really helped with that. Like being able to research topics and then come back to the table on how I feel about it based off of the information that I just received and being able to explain it to you in a way that you understand. Like that's just, it's something that has been just the biggest insecurity of mine. And I feel like I don't think like enough Americans even know how to do it. Like I agree with you. Like I don't want to be a dumb person. Like honestly, like that's where my motivation comes from with being curious, is I don't want to be dumb.
So it is a skill to be able to like express things and talk about an idea or information and share it, and people go, oh, I get it. Yeah. That's a skill, and you can work on it, you can sharpen it. And you notice with old people, when they lose their curiosity, they think they have all the answers, and like that information crystallizes, and that's just the truth. Right. Like that's why old people still trust the news. Because 60 years ago, the news was accurate. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have...
I think some old people. I don't think the majority.
I think the majority of old people still watch Fox or CNN, and they look at it and they go, we have a handsome, polished person that speaks like this, and they tell the truth all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the news. Right. And then you have some, like, blue-haired journalist on the front line going, that's not what's happening. But you don't like how I look, so you don't want to listen to me. And I'm going to post it on Twitter. Yeah. But that's the present news. It's the best news. Yeah. I think.
Well, speaking of news, there was a news headline that I saw on Instagram, and I went down like the Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole because I had like an initial thought on it. Like my curiosity sparked. I'm like, I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
Or if it's true, like what does that actually mean? So UNR was voted from US Weekly as one of the top colleges in the US. That was it.
Out of how many?
Okay, exactly. So that was the headline, and I saw a lot of people from Reno actually post it. And hey, I love UNR. Like I really do love Reno and the university. I feel like I got a great education that has affected who I am as a person today.
Yeah, it's a great campus, great culture.
Yeah, like I really. So what I'm about to say does not. I'm not trying to like minimize that.
But Reno's fucking dumb.
No, but like I was just curious because it said it was one of the top schools in the U.S. voted by US Weekly and didn't say the number. You know, they were just like, oh, we're so proud. So I was like, okay, I'm curious, like, what is that number? So I go to US Weekly, I go to that article, and I start, scrolling because it starts with 1, and there's 436 results. And I'm like, okay, like, if it's top, my definition of top is like, I don't know, like top 10, top 20. Like, in my mind, that's just how I define top. So I'm scrolling, I get past the 10, I get past the 20, it's not there. I get past the 50, it's not there. I get past the 100, it's not there. 150.
That's like Biden. He's like, I graduated top of my class.
Yeah. And
Bottom 50.
so then I'm like, okay. And
where do we rank?
yeah, so UNR, according to US Weekly, ranks 204 out of 436 of the top schools in the U.S.
That's a lot.
It's
the top schools.
It's the top 49% of. So okay, so that's where my curiosity was. Right, you're looking at that and you're like 204. Like what the fuck?
Also, when you start ranking top schools, when your list goes over 100, there's a problem.
Well, here's the thing. How many universities do you think there are in the U.S.?
Are you going to count junior colleges and community colleges, or just?
Yeah, it's just like any institution that gives degrees.
I'm going to guess around 3,000.
So there's approximately 4,000 degree granting institutions in the U.S.
Okay.
There's 2,828 four-year colleges.
2,000, so 2,800.
Yeah, about 2,800.
Okay, so that's what I'm coming.
Right. So after kind of doing a little bit more research, 204 out of 436 is the top 47%. So when you think about it like that, you're like, oh my gosh, we suck. But then when you do 4,000 institutions, considering all degree granting institutions, U.S. ranks top 5% overall, which is actually a lot better and makes the University of Nevada, Reno a stronger school to go to than most in the U.S. when you look at the 4,000 institutions.
I mean, if we're going to compare like how healthy we are to the U.S. population, and like 60% is morbidly obese, we're already in the top 5% healthiest. Look at us. But we're not ultra marathoners.
No, I'm not saying that the University of Nevada, Reno is the ultra marathon. Like, yeah, I'm not saying that, but I am like, I'm just kind of pointing out, like, just that headline got me curious because I was like, what in the world? I was like, what happened in the last 4 years where UNR just became like one of the top schools? Like, I was just like, there's no way, because the last time that I checked, it wasn't the top schools. So it's just how you define top too, right? Yeah. Like,
I guess in my example, we're like the lady who goes to Pilates 3 times a week. Like, yeah, we're healthy. We like to eat at Whole Foods. Like, that's Reno, all right? That's how I picture UNR. I had this
people that do Pilates are healthy, though, for the most part. So why are you...
I just don't expect them to help me move a couch.
But that's your definition of, like...
Fit
is, like, someone that could help move a couch, but, like... See, that's your definition.
Yeah. Yeah, and I consider Ivy League schools to be at the top. I think that they're...
And they were.
And they should be.
Every single one, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But as I started getting down, I was like, where the fuck is UNR?
400? Well, I guess out of 4,000, that's top 10%. That's decent.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Well, it's 209 out of 4,000. So yeah.
What's the worst university? Did you find that information?
I mean, do you want to know
what's the worst ranked university in the U.S.?
Do you want to know out of the top 436, what was the 436? Because I think that will be easier. All right, let's see.
I am also interested in just the worst ranked U.S. college. So if your top worst colleges...
The 3 worst colleges by graduation state: Florida Institute of Technology online, 2, Miami University Hamilton, 3, Indiana Institute of Technology College of Professional Studies.
Well, yeah, with a name that long, I wouldn't graduate either.
Yeah.
Nobody asks where you're going. You're just...
But the worst is Florida Institute of Technology, which is an online school. So... There you go. I think we can move on from that. I think the whole point of why I wanted to bring that news headline up was because, like, I think it's important in general, like, not to just read a news headline. Like, there was an article that came out that talked about how, like, 63% of the population, like, doesn't believe or trust the news anymore.
Good.
And it's because of what... It's because of, like, all the censorship that's been happening over the last, I would say, like, 8 years. Like, I feel like we haven't been able to have true journalism that isn't coming from a biased perspective. There's been so much emotion wrapped up in it. And I think that there's a lot of, like, indie journalism that's happening right now on YouTube, which I really love. I've been enjoying that type of journalism more, where it's just, like, you know, straight up interviews without any bias that's tagged along with it, even though I have noticed in a couple episodes of anyway.
There's always bias.
There's always bias, but I feel like there was just less bias when you're going into the streets, you're going into the community and asking directly firsthand questions to them. So, anyway, all that to say, do some research, do some digging, be curious when you're reading news headlines.
So let me ask you something. Curiosity. We've talked about it a lot. It's probably the top word of this conversation. Mm-hmm. Are you ever curious about your curiosity? Do you ever wonder where your interests come from?
Well, I think what I had mentioned before is it comes from motivation of self-interest. I think whatever phase of life that you're going through and whatever struggle that you're experiencing in that phase of life and, you know, how to make your life better, I think that's where a lot of curiosity for me personally comes from. I think sometimes too, when something doesn't fit my narrative, I'm always like, why?
Like your worldview?
Yeah, my worldview, like my perspective.
My narrative.
I mean, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Like I do get curious of like, well, why doesn't that match? And I think that's why it's important to look at all different perspectives. I think you can also get lost in that too. You know, if you don't have, I think when you're too curious, sometimes I think it's been harder for me to like stand on like, well, what do I believe? Mm-hmm. I think it's supposed to help, like being curious sometimes, but then actually deciding, like making a decision based off of that curiosity. Okay, you have all the information. Now, where do you stand? Sometimes that's been really hard for me because I feel pulled in a lot of different directions. And so to just like make a decision like right then and there and to, you know, it's like, well, what if it's like that decision and that belief maybe fits like this circumstance for me, but then it doesn't fit other circumstances. And so it's like, yeah. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So how would you answer your own question?
Where does my curiosity come from?
Mm-hmm. Or you can conversate on what I just said. Okay.
Yeah, I want to touch on what you were talking about. That was more interesting to me. So it's important when you have a belief that if you get new information, you can change that belief. Like if it's a fixed belief, I'm not talking about morals. Okay. You know what's right and wrong, but you might believe that the 2020 election was stolen. Okay. And that Russia actually was helping Donald Trump. Something crazy.
Yeah.
That if you only take that information from 2020 and you don't look at all the other information that's come through, that's disproved a lot of it, you go, oh, okay, my beliefs have changed. I think there's a lot of people that have been broken by the last 8 years that look at Trump. They don't like him as a character. They look at how the media has portrayed him and his followers or believers, and they demonize these people. And that just becomes belief. That seems to be like the fact, right? And then the facts change. The same thing happened with the pandemic, with COVID. Like, there are still people wearing masks outdoors in the sun where COVID doesn't spread very well at all.
Right.
And these masks don't do anything for you other than make you look like you're part of that cult. Like, there's been so much more information that's come out, but their beliefs have stayed back because that's what's convenient. That's what they believe. And they're not willing to accept other information like, okay, now I can change my outlook on the world. So that's important to keep in mind. It's something that I try to keep in mind because I'll have these really rigid ideas for a little while, and then my worldview changes. I'll encounter something that makes me question it. I'm like, fuck, I'm actually wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I have to be okay with being wrong. And a lot of people, it's not like this win-lose. It's okay to be wrong. Like, even as an expert, that's part of trial and error and finding an answer is, yeah, you have to experiment. Sometimes you're incorrect. Back to my question about curiosity, where your current interests are. I was reflecting on like what I was interested in as a child, because I see a lot of that kind of bubble up, but it manifests in different ways. So like the reason that I'm interested in comedy is because my other interests are writing, critical thinking, being a contrarian, being inappropriate, like having the wrong idea and being funny, like, because I love attention. That's where it comes from. And then there was some other shit that I was just remembering. I was just thinking about what I was interested in when I was younger. Are you familiar with the Insane Clown Posse?
Insane Clown Posse?
The ICP.
No.
So, you're not down with the clown? I was interested in the Insane Clown Posse because it's a musical group of white dudes that paint their face in clown makeup, and they appeal mostly to like trailer trash whites. The poorest usually have really bad dental health. They have a lot going on. Those people, all right, the underlings of the community. So I was interested in them for a while, and then I looked at their fans and their fan base, and I was like, I don't want to be associated with any of this.
Yeah.
But what really stood out to me was like, these are people living authentically. They're being themselves. They're weirdos and they're societal outcasts and they don't belong. But that's what made them so like cool to me. And I look at that way with like motorcycle clubs. I look at that with artists, with musicians. It's not people trying to be cool. It's people being real and weird and them. And that's like what stands out, why they're so excited about it. That's what gets a fan base. That's what gets people going.
Yeah.
Like, I respect that. And so I see my interests aligning with those types of characters a lot. That's what sticks out to me. Yeah. But the fan base ruined ICP for me.
Yeah, I think the Justin Bieber fan base ruined it for me. That's why I was never into him when I was younger. I was never a believer. I did go to a concert of his, though, just because.
You went to a J. Biebs concert?
I went to a J. Biebs concert. Yeah. But it was because the group of friends that I had, these girls were obsessed with him when I was in, I want to say it was like 6th grade. They were obsessed with him.
How could you not be?
And
I
mean, I'm not saying that I didn't listen to his music at all.
Every 30 seconds.
But like, I was never one to like obsess about a music group. I never had like posters of music artists in my room or bands or anything like that. But things that I was curious about when I was younger, I think again, or just like interest in general. Like, I've said it so many times. It's probably I'm a broken record here, but like, even when I was talking to my dad about it, I was like, do you remember like things that I was curious about? Like, I know I didn't read, as much as I probably should, but like, what did you see me like really interested in and pursuing? And he said musical theater was like a huge part of my life. It really was, all throughout elementary school, and middle school. Like, I stopped in high school because I was so, tormented by friends that like didn't understand musical theater. Mm-hmm. And I think at that time I was like more focused on like having friends and having a friend group than pursuing something that I was interested in and could have made more friends in.
Yeah. Middle school dreams go to die.
Yeah. But, I mean, that completely shaped me as a person. Like when I think about, cause I was self-reflecting on like, what was the music that I listened to in high school, middle school, and elementary school? Mm-hmm. Like high school, I was definitely kind of in my emo phase, my rebellious phase. I was listening to a lot of like alternative music, EDM. And then middle school, I was definitely in like my Kesha, Katy Perry, 303
pop
music. But elementary school, I was listening to like musicals. I listened to
musicals.
Yes, like the soundtracks.
Really?
I always had like Annie on, Wicked, Les Miserables.
Les Miserables.
Les Miserables.
Yeah.
It's not Les Miserables.
No, that's not how you pronounce it.
It's because it's like miserables. The miserable.
The miserable. It's French plural, but you pronounce it Les Miserables. Like a mouthful of peanut butter. Les Miserables.
Okay. Les Mis, for short.
That's why everybody calls it Les Mis, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. I was like, that really shaped me as a person. I think that's why I am so expressive. Like, I literally can't, like, I don't know, people might think that I'm fake for like my expressions.
Would you listen to this in the car?
The soundtracks?
Yeah.
Yeah. I listened to them with my mom. I would like have to memorize these songs because I was also like, I was in those musicals.
Right. But just, that sounds nightmarish to me.
Oh my gosh. No. I mean, that's what, you don't get it. Like you're not a theater kid.
No.
Like belting out and pretending that you're the main character singing the song. It's exhilarating.
That's an experience.
Like, do you ever, okay, when you sing in the car on songs,
yeah.
Oh, come on.
Me? Sing? Never.
When you rap in the song, when you sing in all the country music that we were listening to.
I gotcha.
The Highwayman.
Yeah.
You know the songs that you belt out in the car.
Man,
you know the songs that you belt out in the car.
Yeah, I gotcha.
You take that concept and you embody this character that you feel like you are.
Yeah.
That's what the musical songs would be for me. It would literally be like, I am the main character in this musical that I always wanted to be in.
I am Orphan Annie.
Yes. Like, it's a hard knock life. Like like I was obsessed with that. Cause I think about like, I was like, what music did I listen to as a kid? I'm like, oh no, it was like all the musicals. And then I started getting into, the more inappropriate pop songs.
Yeah. Listening back to some of that, there's a lot of jokes about, not even jokes, I call them jokes, but it's like lyrics about sucking dick and I can make your bed rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Nicki Minaj. Yeah.
And we're like 11, 12 singing this in a minivan and parents are just.
Oh my gosh. I remember, we would have that, with our parents in the car and we're all belting it.
Okay, actually.
I can make your bed rock, girl.
Back when Facebook was a thing, my high school girlfriend freshman year had like quoted that song. And my mom saw it and was like, what a whore. Like, literally, because the quote was, I'm not Fred Flintstone, but I can make your bed rock.
Yeah.
And this has come from like a 14-year-old girl. And like, obviously it means like, I can fuck.
Right.
My mom read that and was mortified. She was like, my baby boy, what does he do? So that's just like a stamp of hilarity to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things that you were interested in as a kid outside of like media and music, like I was really into Egypt. I wanted from like ages probably 6 until 10, I wanted to be an Egyptologist, which is a real job, by the way. And you get zero pussy doing it. But you go to the desert and hang out with a bunch of other dorks, and you're just brushing sand until you find things. And they're like, okay, we know that there's a pyramid here, there's a burial site here.
Yeah.
And like, I was obsessed. I wanted to go to Egypt and live in Egypt and be like a little archaeologist. That's where
I can totally see that though. Yeah. Like every time that you do talk about your interest as a child, like it just makes sense also in who you are today.
Yeah.
And how you share information. Like I remember like watching documentaries with you about like the lost civilization and just like all these different ancient civilization documentaries, and I was like, what I was just like, what is going on? Like I was like, I am not interested in this at all. Let's turn on reality TV. Like
there's a little fire inside of me. I'm like, I get so excited.
But like it's made like because of your curiosities and interests in life, like it's made me feel like a more dynamic human, because like now I'm learning about that, which is something that I would have never been interested in before. But then when you're actually paying attention to it, it's like, oh, like now I want to go visit that place. Like now I want to travel, and like now I want to learn more about it. Like I think that is the cool thing about learning from other people's interests and curiosities, and also like why, like as a kid, like why do you think that you were so interested in going to Egypt, and you know,
like why was I interested in Egypt?
Why were you interested in just like where do you think that came from? Do you think it like
because in school, I remember a teacher had been talking about how much more advanced we are than these people. And I'm like, pause for a moment. One of the blocks in the pyramid is weighing over like 1,000 tons. That's 2 million pounds. Okay. We can't move that with a Tonka truck today. We can't do that. It takes an enormous amount of effort. And she's telling us that we've evolved and we're so much more advanced. And I'm like, these people are pretty fucking smart, and we don't have an answer for. Mind you, I wasn't talking like that as a child. Right. But in my head, I'm like, you idiot. Like, you're teaching me wrong facts.
Yeah.
So my excitement was like, okay, there's something missing here. And it doesn't make sense historically. And then as time has gone on, like they started developing Göbekli Tepe in the 90s is when they found it. And that takes our history books that we learned in school and throws so much of that information out. Goes, it's wrong. Turns out people were way more advanced 10,000 years ago and could do architectural feats that make no sense today, that we don't have the capacity or the manpower or the money for. So that means that somebody else had a lot of time on their hands, which means that life was comfortable and stable enough to do these enormous megalithic feats. Because in order to do something like that, especially if you don't have any kind of digital remains, so we assume they don't have like diesel engines, we assume they don't have a lot of the current architecture, electricity, for example. That is confusing. That's a huge plot hole.
Right.
And we're like, how did they do that? And also, aren't these supposed to be like warring tribe people that are nomadic? No, you have to have like a solid source of food. You can't have war. Like life needs to be easy in order to build a pyramid.
Yeah.
Like you can't be getting raided by Rome.
Right.
You know? And so the timeline was way off. So just the questions about it when I'm reading these books, I'm like, something is off here, just got me going. And it was a big question mark. Yeah.
But that's such a skill set to have at that age. Like, oh my gosh, I was definitely not as like well versed in questioning authority.
Like I realized how excited I was talking about that. I was getting riled up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool.
I always just thought that like what the teacher taught was the truth, and that was it. Like I never really had any reason to like not believe an authority figure, where with you, you know, you did. And you explained that before. Like you saw failure in your parents, and that just was like the beginning of questioning.
It's like, well, if you can be wrong, then other people can be wrong. Which means I can be wrong.
See, and I feel like I did see like my parents be wrong, because it's like I saw arguments happen, but like I thought when they argued, it was like the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
And it was like more of like a theatrical show for me than it was like, oh, you guys are like in a disagreement about something. And instead of using like critical thinking skills of like,
get the popcorn.
I was like, instead of being like, well, why does my mom believe this and why does my dad believe that? Like, it was literally a show, like a reality TV show for me. I would be like, dying on the floor.
Yeah, you're like the jury. You're like, convince me who's right.
I signed the judge. It's like I go back to like
Mom
theater.
wins.
I would, because I would, depending on whose argument like sounded better to me, I would then go to their side and I would like start bagging on whoever that we were bagging on.
You're the worst.
It was.
See, your family arguing is like hilarity for you. Mine is trauma for me. And so, because my parents would not like friendly name call. It would be like, the world is over.
Yeah.
If that happens. Your parents are just like, I'm going to go right for the jugular. I'm going to make fun of, oh, you can't get the words out. Like they talk shit and it's funny. Like, I enjoy that. But
It like, even when you make fun of me, it hits a funny bone in me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally love it because one, it's like, it doesn't need to be this serious. Like, come on, like we're making fun of each other. It's just funny. But oh my gosh, when people do get really sensitive over it, it's just like, it's the worst thing ever.
Puffy.
Yeah, it really is just the worst.
I don't know. I love when we're being silly and playing with each other because it starts to cascade. Like once I get you a little bit, then I can talk more shit and it just escalates until you're dying. And I'm like, yes, I win. I win today.
Yeah. But I wanted to end on something because I feel like over the last 5 days or however a week since the election happened.
The glorious outcome of the election. You mean that one?
No, I do want to acknowledge that, like, immediately on social media, there were people that came out saying that they couldn't even be friends with people that voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm. It's an ignorant way to think, but.
And to be honest, it really did, like, it really rubbed me the wrong way because I think, like, for you to feel like, okay, your party didn't win, it's just like, I really want to know like where they're coming from, but also like have them be open to know where like the other side is coming from too.
Yeah.
And to say that like you're not going to be friends with someone because like, well, and that's the thing too. Cause okay, sorry. I'm kind of like thinking about this like out loud. Mm-hmm. I'm out loud processing right now.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Welcome to the podcast. I feel like it's okay to have a boundary. Like it's more than okay to have like a moral boundary, and then to see somebody else like cross that boundary. Like, no, if you need to make the decision that they should not be in your life because they cross that boundary for you, I totally understand that. In this like political world right now, I think that it's so hard to have conversation without it like getting super heated and then without like name calling each other, because the Democratic Party basically thinks Republicans are neo-Nazi little Hitlers running around, and then
the entire Democratic Party. Just
no, but I'm saying the extreme. Like, okay, I'm talking about extreme left and extreme right, and then the extreme right just thinks that the Democratic Party is like stupid and idiots running around.
Yeah, and
so I feel like there hasn't been this like middle ground of people that are actually able to like be mature and talk and learn from each other, because people have been so afraid to actually speak what they feel like and what they know to be true, because they're so afraid of the extremes on both sides.
You should be afraid of the extremes on both sides.
Exactly.
Good.
I know, but it's just like it's gotten so out of hand. But I think like what happened in this election is the middle finally like rose up and showed how they've been feeling over the last 4 years. So, like a lot of independents were swayed. And okay, all that to say, I think like the point that I was trying to make before I let you talk is that it's okay if your boundary did get crossed, and if that person crossed it on a political moral spectrum for you and you truly feel like you cannot be friends with that person, even though they have not like wronged you in any other way. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people were upset with like the abortion rights, and they think that Trump is going to somehow like create this national abortion ban. which I don't believe to be true at all.
Also not possible.
And not possible. So it's like
states' rights.
Yeah. So I think that when it comes down to that decision and that's your only motivation for voting for the Democrat Party, it's up to the states, right? So I'm like, okay, I did my civic duty and I did vote to have the
abortion enshrined in the
Nevada the abortion enshrined in Nevada Constitution. But like, I'm not going to vote for someone that literally has like no policies in place for how they're going to make the country better. So it's like, why can't it be both? Like I saw this other Instagram post that the Real Vegas Locals posted and they were like, Nevada voted for Trump and to have abortion enshrined into the Nevada Constitution. Like it can be both. And it's like, obviously, I don't agree with everything that like Trump did in his term, but like, there's also like nothing that you can do about it on a national level now. So now it's up to you to like do something on a state level. Which is the best outcome, I think. Like having... I mean, I don't know if it's the best outcome because a lot of states like... created an abortion ban. Like, I don't agree with that, but... Which is also inaccurate. It's not a total ban. I think there's 2 states that have total bans. One of them's Alabama. But leaving it up to the states means that the people can elect representatives, but they can also vote on those ballot measures directly instead of having representatives go to the Fed and vote on their behalf. That's why it's great for states' rights. What I wanted to touch on was the silent majority. You hear the extremes. You hear the loud right. You hear the loud left. And I want to caution people to think mass generalization. You cannot say all Republicans. You can't say all Democrats because there's a lot of reasonable people out there. Yeah. And typically reasonable people listen to these crazy loud motherfuckers and go, I don't want any part of that. And so they're just quiet. They don't necessarily agree with it. And I think that's what the media has unfortunately like ignited over the last 8 years. Yeah. Which is we're going to pay attention to the loudest, most obnoxious people in the room that are the most irrational because they make the most entertaining news. The people in the middle are boring because they're reasonable and they go, yeah, I agree that we should have access to guns and I think that abortion is probably reasonable in other circumstances. Not for me personally, but who am I to get in the way of your rights? That's a boring news. That's a boring voter. They don't cover those people. And that's the silent majority. They exist. It's okay to talk out loud. I feel like I'm in the middle of that. I just don't want to be silent no more. My voice will be heard at the voting booth. Like I think that's where like freedom of speech comes in. Like I don't want, like you have the freedom to disagree with somebody, but you should also have the freedom to say something and not be silenced and not be called a fucking neo-Nazi because of it. Because it's like, I truly was so in the middle. I was like I realized at the poll that I was registered as other, like I was registered as an independent. I didn't even realize that, but I feel like, yeah, it's okay to speak your opinion. And I feel like you have to have open dialogue about it because how else are people supposed to learn if you don't have a conversation? Or even a debate. Yeah. Like if you believe something and somebody else comes to you and they have a better argument, it might sway you. Right. If you're not just in a conversation to win, but you actually are interested and curious, you're like, okay, I'm open to hearing your side. Change my mind. Like that's... Yeah, the debates are really fun. Like even in the last couple of months, I was like watching all the Charlie Kirk debates, which is probably, that's like the most extreme, like right in my opinion. Like he's not the most extreme. Not the most extreme, but I felt like watching it was just very Republican. And but I was like, I really like the debates that he's having because it's making me, I think that he's having it with people that don't, they're like college kids, it's like they don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair at all, but it's entertaining. And I really like that style because it's like you can try to get to some sort of truth at the end of the day. Am I a debater? No, I'm like a moderator. I'm going to mitigate in between, but I don't think I'm a debater, but I like to learn from debates. Because they pose interesting ideas and they're like,
well, what if in this scenario, like I don't oppose abortion, but I oppose abortion for us. Like that's a personal feeling. So that's where like I'm going to vote on behalf of freedom for others, not necessarily where
it's freedom of others for sure. I think the point of what I was trying to make by bringing up people getting so up in arms and like, oh, I can't be friends with you because of this. Like literally I saw that on multiple accounts and I'm like, you know what? Fine. Like that's okay. If you like strongly, it's like, I don't love all of your behaviors and everything that you talk about, but am I still going to be friends with you and like have you in my life? Yeah. Like, because I care about you as a friend and a person. So it's like the fact that you're going to this like extreme side and I understand like you have a lot of feelings right now and I want you to process that. But at the end of the day, it's just like, we have the freedom to make that decision. And so it's like, if boundaries were crossed, moral boundaries were crossed for people, like they can make that decision to not be friends with someone and have them in their life. And the same thing, it's just across the board. That's how you have the freedom to do that.
You do have the freedom to do that. And if you're threatened by having opinions that disagree with yours around you, do a little reflection, be a little curious about that.
Yeah.
Like going forward, I want this podcast to continue to be curious. I want to explore different topics. I want to talk to different people. I want to hear other perspectives because that's what I find interesting. And hopefully we can learn something from it.
And on that note, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.